"They stole my clothes, Cowboy. Please help me," said the Apache woman bathing in the lake. The sun had barely begun its slow climb over the rugged hills when Nayeli stepped out of the shadow of the small brush where she had been walking. She paused for a moment to take a deep breath, letting the crisp morning air fill her lungs. The desert had its own rhythm, the wind whispering through the cacti, the distant calls of birds echoing across the hills, and the soft rustle of leaves from the sparse trees dotting the landscape. Life in the Apache village had always been tied closely to nature, and Nayeli had learned to move through it with quiet respect and awareness. It had been a long week in the village. Water was scarce, and everyone had been busy preparing for the upcoming change in seasons. The elders were busy teaching the younger children the skills they would need to survive: how to track small animals, how to find edible plants, how to respect the land. Nayeli had listened carefully, absorbing every story, every warning, every piece of knowledge. Yet for all the lessons and work, there was one thing she craved above all else: a few moments of solitude. That morning, she had decided to go to the lake, a hidden place she had discovered years earlier. The path to the water was not easy, winding through rocky outcrops and thorny bushes, but Nayeli had walked it many times and knew every turn. The lake was small, tucked between high cliffs that protected it from prying eyes and wandering travelers. The surface of the water reflected the sky, calm and clear, like a perfect mirror. For Nayeli, the lake was not just a place to bathe. It was a sanctuary, a place to gather her thoughts and feel the soft touch of the sun on her skin without the watchful eyes of the village elders. As she approached the water, Nayeli could hear the gentle lapping of the waves against the shore. The soft hum of nature surrounded her, soothing her mind after days of constant activity. She paused on the edge of the lake, letting her gaze wander over the clear water. Fish darted beneath the surface, their scales glittering in the sunlight like tiny jewels. Birds swooped down to catch insects near the water's edge, their wings cutting through the air with grace. Nayeli smiled quietly, feeling a sense of calm she rarely found anywhere else. She set down her belongings carefully, a small bundle of clothes and a few personal items, and stepped closer to the water. She dipped her hands into the cool liquid, letting it run over her fingers. The chill made her gasp slightly, but the sensation was refreshing. Slowly, she began to undress, placing each item neatly on a flat rock nearby. This ritual had become familiar over the years, a quiet routine that connected her to the land and to herself. She moved with care, aware of every sound around her, from the distant rustle of animals in the bushes to the occasional bird call echoing off the cliffs. Nayeli lowered herself into the water, letting it cover her shoulders. The coolness wrapped around her, washing away the heat of the sun and the dust from the trail. She closed her eyes and let her mind wander, thinking of the stories her grandmother had told her when she was a child. Tales of the spirits of the land, of the cleverness of her ancestors, of the balance between humans and nature. Each story had a lesson, and each lesson had shaped the person she was today. As she floated, she felt connected to generations of women who had bathed in lakes, rivers, and streams, finding both sustenance and peace in the water. Time passed slowly. Nayeli was lost in the rhythm of the water and her thoughts. The lake had a way of making hours feel like minutes, of letting her forget the burdens of everyday life. She was aware of the sun climbing higher, painting the cliffs with warm gold and orange hues, but she did not care. Here, she felt free. Here, she felt safe. Yet the world beyond the lake was never truly quiet. The lands around the Apache village were becoming more crowded with travelers, settlers, and wanderers. Stories of strangers passing through, sometimes friendly, sometimes not, were frequent in the village. Nayeli had been taught to be cautious, to always keep an eye and an ear open, even in her most private moments. Still, she trusted in the natural barriers around the lake, the cliffs, the brush, the hidden paths. She believed they would keep her safe. But even the most careful precautions cannot account for every possibility. From somewhere beyond the brush, faint noises began to drift across the water. At first, Nayeli thought it might be the wind shifting through the trees or a small animal moving through the rocks. She opened her eyes and scanned the area, letting her gaze follow the path that led to the lake. The noise came again, closer this time, deliberate and human. Her heart skipped a beat, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. Instinctively, she moved toward the center of the lake, letting the water hide her partially. Her mind raced. Who could be out there? A lost traveler seeking help, or someone with less friendly intentions? She could not be sure. The solitude she had cherished moments ago now felt fragile, threatened by the unknown. Yet she reminded herself to stay calm. Panic could cloud judgment. She focused on listening, straining to catch even the faintest hint of movement. Then she saw them. A group of figures emerging from the rocks, moving quickly but carefully, almost silently. Nayeli's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to breathe steadily. She had grown up learning to assess danger, to notice even small details. The sound of footsteps on dry earth, the shift of a shadow in the sunlight. She watched the figures, noting their size, their posture, the way they carried themselves. It was clear they had not expected to find anyone here. Nayeli realized she needed to act quickly. The items she had set on the rock, the clothes, her small personal belongings, were vulnerable. She called out once, her voice steady despite the fear rising inside her. "Please." "Stay back," she shouted, hoping to assert herself and buy time. But the figures paused only briefly, then continued moving toward the rock where her belongings lay. Her heart sank. In that instant, Nayeli remembered every lesson her grandmother had taught her, not just about the land and survival, but about courage, presence, and clever thinking. She could not allow herself to be frozen by fear. She had to respond, to find a way to protect herself and her dignity. And so, with a mixture of courage and desperation, she prepared to confront the unexpected threat, knowing that her actions in the next moments would matter more than she could yet imagine. For Nayeli, the lake had always been a place of peace. Now, it was about to become a place of testing, where her wits, her courage, and her trust in humanity would be challenged in ways she had never anticipated. Nayeli's heart raced as she watched the figures move closer. Her eyes were wide, her mind alert, analyzing every detail of the situation. She could see now that they were not children as she had first hoped, but young men, their movements quick and bold. The sunlight glinted off something in their hands, perhaps sticks, perhaps nothing at all, but their purpose was clear. They had come to take what did not belong to them. Nayeli's hands gripped the cool water around her, a small comfort, as she tried to think of what to do next. She had always been clever, her mind trained by the elders to notice patterns, to anticipate danger. She knew the area well, the rocks, the hidden paths, the thickets that could provide temporary cover. But the situation was delicate. She could not outrun them easily, and the water that gave her calm now limited her movement. Panic threatened to rise, but Nayeli forced it down, focusing instead on what she could control. She had to stay calm, or everything she valued could be lost. The figures reached the edge of the water, laughing quietly to themselves. One of them reached toward the rock where her clothes lay, as though the treasure they sought were a prize. The sun had reached its highest point in the sky, casting warm light across the village as Nayeli stepped through the familiar paths toward her home. The events of the morning had left her exhausted, yet a quiet strength hummed through her veins. Every step she took reminded her of what had happened, the fear, the courage, and the unexpected assistance of Samuel, the cowboy who had arrived at just the right moment. She reflected on the lessons she had learned, realizing that even moments of danger could teach clarity, patience, and resilience. Her family had been waiting anxiously near the edge of the village. Naeli's younger siblings ran toward her, relief lighting their faces, and her mother approached with eyes full of concern. "Naeli, are you all right?" her mother asked, voice trembling slightly. Naeli smiled softly, wrapping her arms around the blanket and then around her mother. "I'm fine," she said calmly. "It was frightening, but I am safe now." She carefully recounted the events of the morning, leaving nothing out but doing so with a sense of composure that surprised even herself. Her father, who had been repairing a fence in the early morning sun, approached, his hands still dusty from work. He listened closely as Naeli explained how her belongings had been stolen, how she had managed to stay calm, and how Samuel had helped her retrieve everything. There was pride in his eyes mixed with concern. He nodded slowly, acknowledging her courage. "You acted wisely," he said. "Bravery is important, but so is thinking carefully. You have shown both today." Naeli felt a warmth spread through her chest. The acknowledgement from her family reassured her, confirming that her actions had mattered. The villagers, too, had begun to gather, drawn by the story of the morning's events. Word traveled quickly in a close-knit community. Neighbors who had seen the young men in the area before now understood that their mischief had been more serious than it seemed. Naeli spoke to them calmly, explaining not only what had happened, but also how she had acted with care and intelligence to reclaim her belongings and ensure safety. Her voice carried authority and clarity, showing that courage could be combined with wisdom. As the villagers listened, Naeli realized that the morning had become more than just an ordeal. It had become a lesson, not only for herself but for the community. People were learning the importance of staying alert, acting thoughtfully, and standing firm in one's principles. Even the children watched her with wide eyes, understanding through her example that bravery and intelligence were qualities to cultivate. Naeli felt a quiet pride knowing that her actions could inspire others to act with care and courage in difficult situations. Later in the day, Samuel, the cowboy, stayed for a short while, helping Naeli ensure that her belongings were properly packed and organized. He spoke with the villagers briefly, sharing a few words of wisdom about being cautious in unfamiliar places and respecting others' spaces. His presence was calm and reassuring, and the villagers could see that he had acted with fairness and integrity. Naeli observed him with gratitude, realizing that the morning had shown her not only her own strength, but also the importance of trust and cooperation. When Samuel finally prepared to leave, Naeli felt a mixture of gratitude and sadness. She had never met him before, yet his timely assistance had made a significant difference. She stepped forward and spoke clearly, her voice steady. "Thank you for helping me," she said. "You arrived at exactly the right moment, and your wisdom and calmness helped me more than words can describe." Samuel nodded, tipping his hat slightly. "You were brave," he replied. "I only helped when I could. Remember, courage comes in many forms, and so does wisdom. You showed both today." As he rode away, disappearing into the distant hills, Naeli felt a sense of closure. The morning's events had tested her in ways she could not have imagined. Fear, uncertainty, and vulnerability had been present, but she had acted with courage, intelligence, and care. She realized that these qualities were not only valuable in moments of danger, but in everyday life as well. The experience had strengthened her, teaching her to trust herself, observe carefully, and act thoughtfully. The lake, which had once been a place of quiet solitude, now held a deeper meaning for Naeli. It had been the setting of both fear and courage, a place where she had confronted danger and emerged stronger. She returned there later in the afternoon, walking slowly along the shore. The water shimmered in the sunlight, calm and inviting. Naeli dipped her hands into the lake, feeling the cool water wash over her fingers. She reflected on the morning, thinking about the balance between vulnerability and strength, fear and courage, independence and trust. Naeli thought about the young men who had taken her belongings. She understood now that they had acted out of thoughtlessness, perhaps without fully realizing the impact of their actions. By confronting them calmly and firmly, she had not only reclaimed her belongings, but had also given them a chance to learn a lesson about respect and integrity. She realized that true courage involved not just protecting oneself, but also guiding others toward understanding and accountability. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the lake and village, Naeli returned home. She felt a sense of peace settle over her. The events of the morning had been challenging, but they had also been transformative. She had faced fear, acted wisely, and received timely help, all while maintaining her dignity and principles. These experiences would remain with her, shaping the way she approached life in the future. That evening, the village gathered around small fires, sharing stories of the day. Naeli sat quietly with her family, listening to the laughter and conversation around her. She could see the respect in the eyes of her community, not only for the events she had endured, but for the way she had handled them. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder, smiling warmly. "You have grown today," she said softly. "Bravery and wisdom will guide you in all your days to come." Naeli nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and understanding. Later that night, as she lay under the star-filled sky, Naeli reflected on the full meaning of the morning. She thought about the courage it had taken to stay calm in the water, the cleverness in her decisions, the trust she had placed in Samuel, and the lessons imparted to those who had acted wrongly. She understood that life would continue to bring challenges, but that every obstacle also contained the potential for growth, learning, and understanding. She thought about the future, imagining herself moving through the village and the surrounding lands with greater confidence and awareness. The lake, the cliffs, and the quiet trails would continue to be her sanctuary, but now they were also symbols of resilience and learning. Naeli knew that she could face uncertainty with intelligence, patience, and courage, and that her actions could influence not only her life but also the lives of others. As the night deepened, the village fell quiet. Naeli felt a sense of closure, a deep inner peace that comes from facing challenges and overcoming them with grace. She understood that true strength came not from force, but from observation, wisdom, and careful action. She had reclaimed her belongings, learned valuable lessons, and gained a new understanding of courage and trust. The events of the day would remain a guiding memory, reminding her that even in moments of fear, clarity, resilience, and compassion could prevail. In the weeks that followed, Naeli noticed changes in herself and in her community. She felt stronger, more confident in her abilities, and more aware of the ways in which careful observation and thoughtful action could influence outcomes. The villagers, too, seemed to carry the lesson of the morning in their minds, understanding that courage and fairness were qualities to respect and emulate. Naeli's story became a quiet inspiration, showing that even difficult situations could be met with intelligence, bravery, and moral clarity. One afternoon, Naeli returned to the lake again, this time with a sense of calm anticipation rather than fear. She walked along the familiar path, taking in the warm sunlight, the rustling leaves, and the gentle lapping of the water. She dipped her hands into the cool lake, feeling refreshed and connected to the world around her. The morning's events had taught her much, but now, standing at the edge of the water, she understood the full depth of the lesson. Courage, wisdom, and kindness could transform fear into strength and uncertainty into clarity. Naeli smiled to herself, feeling a quiet joy. The lake had witnessed her journey, from fear to courage, from vulnerability to empowerment. The events that had once seemed frightening were now a source of strength, guiding her toward a future filled with awareness, confidence, and compassion. She knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she had the tools, the courage, and the wisdom to face them. As the sun set over the distant hills, painting the sky in hues of gold and orange, Naeli stood silently at the lake, breathing in the calm evening air. She reflected on the kindness of Samuel, the lessons learned from the young men, and the resilience she had discovered within herself. Life would continue to bring challenges, but she was ready. With courage, intelligence, and compassion, Nayeli felt prepared to navigate whatever the future held. And so, the day came to a peaceful close, leaving Nayeli with a profound understanding of herself and the world around her. The lake, the village, and the hills had witnessed a story of courage, trust, and wisdom, a story that would remain with her, guiding her for the rest of her life they had been expecting all along. Nayeli called out again, louder this time, her voice carrying across the lake. "Stop, please, give it back." She tried to sound confident, strong, and in control, even as her pulse pounded like a drum in her chest. The young men paused for a moment, looking at her in surprise. It seemed they had not expected anyone to confront them so directly. But their pause was brief. One of them, taller than the rest, took a step forward, reaching toward the rock. Nayeli's mind raced. She needed a plan, something that would keep her safe while protecting her belongings. Then she remembered the small rope she had tied around her waist earlier that morning, a tool she always carried for practical reasons, tying bundles, securing items, or creating small traps. Quick as thought, she grabbed one end and swung it toward a nearby rock, intending to snag one of the approaching figure's legs or at least startle them. The rope hit its mark with a sharp snap, causing the man to stumble slightly. The others froze, and a moment of hesitation filled the air. Nayeli's heart leapt. That small action had given her the advantage she needed. The young men exchanged glances. They had not anticipated resistance. Nayeli, despite her fear, felt a surge of confidence. She could see now that courage was as important as cleverness. Her eyes scanned the area for more ways to create obstacles, to slow them down if necessary. A cluster of rocks lay nearby, large and heavy enough to roll or shift. She could use the natural features of the landscape to her advantage. The cliffs, the bushes, the shallow slopes, all of it could become part of her strategy if she moved carefully. "Please," Nayeli said again, her voice steady but filled with urgency, "this is not yours. You must leave it here." She emphasized the words, hoping the sound of authority and calmness might reach their senses. Her tone carried not just fear, but a quiet power, the kind learned through years of living close to nature and understanding its lessons. The men hesitated again. Perhaps it was the seriousness in her voice, or perhaps the awareness that she was not someone to underestimate. One of them, the taller one, stepped back slightly. Nayeli took a slow breath, keeping her eyes on them while also moving subtly in the water. She had learned from her elders that patience was often stronger than force. She waited, ready to act, but prepared to let a moment of doubt grow in the minds of those who had come with the wrong intention. As the tension built, a sudden movement caught Nayeli's attention. A small bird had landed near the rock where her clothes lay. Its wings fluttered quickly, and it chirped loudly, almost as if it were warning her of the danger. Nayeli smiled faintly despite the fear, noticing how life itself seemed to respond to her presence. She felt a small spark of reassurance. She was not completely alone in this. The world, for all its challenges, seemed to offer tiny allies when one paid attention. One of the young men made another move toward the rock. Nayeli reacted immediately, using her legs to push herself forward in the water. With a swift motion, she splashed water toward them, not with force, but with precision, aiming to startle them and disrupt their coordination. The splash hit the nearest figure squarely, and he yelped, stumbling back. The others lost their rhythm as well, momentarily thrown off by her quick thinking. Nayeli realized that even small actions performed decisively could make a difference. She called out once more, louder this time, appealing not just to fear or respect but to common decency. "Please, you are taking something that is not yours. It is not right." Her voice echoed against the cliffs, strong and unwavering. It was more than a plea. It was a declaration of her dignity, her identity, and her right to safety. In that moment, Naeli understood something profound. Courage was not just about fighting. It was about standing firm in one's truth, even when the world seemed against you. The taller man hesitated again, glancing at his companions. Naeli could see uncertainty flicker across their faces. They had expected an easy task, a simple theft with no consequences. Instead, they faced someone alert, intelligent, and unafraid. Naeli seized the moment. She began to move slowly toward the shore, maintaining eye contact with them, making it clear that she was not a passive target. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. She wanted them to understand that she would not be intimidated. It was then that a noise came from the opposite side of the lake, a faint shout, distant but carrying a sense of urgency. Naeli's ears perked up. Could it be someone coming to help? A passerby? A traveler? The young men noticed it too, their attention momentarily diverted. Naeli used the distraction to take another small step closer to her belongings, her movements careful but purposeful. The tension hung in the air like a thick fog, heavy and charged, yet filled with the possibility of resolution. Naeli realized that she needed more than just quick thinking. She needed help from outside herself. She had learned that courage sometimes meant asking for support, even when pride suggested otherwise. She called out with a new sense of hope, her voice carrying not just fear but determination. "Please, someone help, I am not alone here." Her words, repeated with clarity and force, traveled across the lake, bouncing off rocks and cliffs in a way that magnified them. The young men looked around, their confidence wavering. They had not expected the situation to escalate so quickly, nor had they anticipated resistance. Naeli saw that her strategy, using both the environment and her own courage, was working. She continued to edge closer to her rock, ready to retrieve her belongings if the right moment arrived. Her heart still pounded, but her fear was now tempered by focus and determination. In that moment, Naeli reflected on everything she had learned growing up in the Apache village. The lessons of her elders, the stories of ancestors, the knowledge of the land, all of it had led her to this point. She understood that danger was part of life, but so was resilience. She understood that even in moments of uncertainty, thoughtful action could change the outcome. And she understood, perhaps most importantly, that courage was born from clarity, preparation, and the refusal to give in to panic. The young men took a step back, unsure of what to do next. Naeli remained still, watching, ready to act if necessary. Time seemed to stretch, every second heavy with anticipation. And then, just as she had hoped, she saw movement in the distance, someone approaching along the edge of the hills, moving quickly, purposefully. Naeli's heart leapt. Perhaps help had arrived just in time to turn the tide. For the first time since the encounter began, Naeli felt a cautious sense of relief. She had not yet won, but she had survived the initial danger. Her quick thinking, careful movements, and clear voice had created a small advantage in a difficult situation. The lake, once a place of calm solitude, had become a stage for courage, strategy, and resilience. Naeli realized that the events unfolding would test her not only physically, but emotionally, teaching her lessons she would carry for the rest of her life. And as the figure approached from the hills, Naeli prepared herself for the next moment, the moment that could change everything. The figure moving along the hills became clearer as it drew closer. Naeli's heart skipped a beat, a mixture of hope and tension filling her chest. She could see the outline of a man riding a horse, the wide brim of a hat shading his face. His posture was steady and confident, and the horse moved with a purposeful gait, each hoofall precise on the rocky terrain. Naeli felt a wave of relief. Someone had heard her cries, someone might help her. But at the same time, a cautious thought ran through her mind. She had to be careful. Not every stranger meant good, and in these lands, appearances could be deceiving. The young men by the lake noticed the rider as well. Their earlier confidence faltered further, eyes darting toward the approaching figure. Nayeli observed them, noting how their movements slowed, uncertainty spreading across their faces. They had expected an easy opportunity, and now that expectation was being challenged. Nayeli's pulse quickened, but she kept her stance steady, ready to act if necessary. Her mind raced, thinking of ways to maintain the advantage she had gained through cleverness and courage. The rider stopped at the top of a small rise, scanning the lake below. Nayeli raised her voice again, calling out with clarity and strength. "Please, help me. They are taking my things." The sound of her voice carried across the water, bouncing off the cliffs and reaching the rider with urgency. She could see him nod slightly, as if understanding the seriousness of the situation, and then he began moving more quickly, urging his horse down the slope toward the lake. Nayeli's heart pounded in her chest. She felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. Perhaps now, with the arrival of this unexpected ally, the situation could change in her favor. She watched carefully, keeping her eyes on both the young men and the approaching rider. Every movement mattered. Every glance, every sound could influence what happened next. As the rider reached the edge of the lake, he slowed his horse and dismounted with practiced ease. He moved quickly, yet cautiously, toward the water, keeping his eyes on the young men while also respecting Nayeli's space. She could see that he was not there to threaten her, that his focus was on the others. There was a calm authority in his movements, a sense of experience and awareness that reassured her. The taller of the young men stepped forward, perhaps intending to challenge the rider, but the cowboy's steady presence caused him to hesitate. Nayeli felt a sense of hope growing inside her. This man, whoever he was, seemed to understand the situation and the importance of acting carefully. She could see that his eyes were sharp, assessing the surroundings, reading the tension in the air. He did not rush or make sudden movements, but there was no doubt he was ready to intervene if needed. "Step back," the cowboy said firmly, his voice carrying across the lake. "Leave her things and walk away." His words were clear, calm, and authoritative. There was no anger in his tone, only a quiet strength that demanded respect. Nayeli felt a sense of admiration, realizing that courage could take many forms, not just in action but in calm and confident speech. The young men glanced at each other, uncertainty written across their faces. They had not expected an authority figure to appear so suddenly, and now the balance of the situation had shifted. Nayeli took a careful step toward her belongings, keeping an eye on the cowboy and the others. She felt a surge of gratitude. His presence had created an opportunity for her to regain control. One of the younger men muttered something under his breath, but the taller one shook his head. They were weighing their options, realizing that this situation was no longer simple. Nayeli noticed the shift in their demeanor. The confidence that had carried them this far was replaced by doubt and hesitation. It was a small victory, but an important one. The cowboy moved closer to the young men, maintaining a safe distance while signaling clearly that he was prepared to act if necessary. Nayeli observed his strategy. He was patient, deliberate, and focused, not seeking confrontation, but ready to ensure justice. She realized that his careful approach mirrored her own lessons from the village. Patience, observation, and strategic action often mattered more than rushing into conflict. The young men, still uncertain, began to step back slowly. Nayeli took another step toward her clothes, keeping her movements deliberate. She could see that the cowboy's presence had restored her sense of safety, allowing her to act with clarity rather than fear. The tension in the air began to ease slightly, replaced by a cautious sense of possibility. Finally, the taller man nodded to his companions. They muttered a few words, clearly deciding it was better to leave than to risk trouble. Slowly they turned and moved away from the lake, their heads low, avoiding further confrontation. Nayeli felt a rush of relief. her body relaxing for the first time in what felt like hours. She had survived the immediate danger, thanks to her own quick thinking and the timely arrival of the cowboy. The cowboy watched the young men disappear, then turned his attention to Naeli. He approached slowly, keeping a respectful distance, and held out a blanket he had brought with him. "Here," he said gently, "take this. You're safe now." Naeli accepted the blanket, wrapping it around herself and feeling its warmth against her skin. She could see the kindness and understanding in his eyes, and a sense of trust began to form. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice still trembling slightly from the adrenaline. "I didn't know what to do. I thought I was alone." The cowboy nodded, acknowledging her fear without judgment. He seemed to understand that bravery was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. "My name is Samuel," he said, his tone calm and steady. "I heard your calls and came as quickly as I could. You're lucky I was nearby." Naeli nodded, feeling a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. She had never met this man before, yet he had appeared at the exact moment she needed help. It was a small miracle, she thought, the kind that often happened in the wilderness if one remained alert and courageous. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Naeli and Samuel began to retrieve her belongings. She moved with care, aware of the natural surroundings and the lessons of the land. Samuel assisted, offering guidance when needed but respecting her independence. Together, they collected her clothes, her small bundle of personal items, and the few things she had left behind. There was a quiet rhythm to the process, a sense of teamwork that grew naturally from the situation. Once everything was gathered, Naeli stepped out of the lake, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin. The water had cooled her, refreshed her, and now the blanket wrapped around her added a comforting layer of protection. She looked at Samuel with a sense of appreciation, recognizing that his presence had made all the difference. It was not just his strength or experience that mattered, but his careful, thoughtful approach to helping someone in need. Samuel nodded, observing her quietly. "You handled yourself well," he said. "You stayed calm, kept thinking, and protected yourself. That's not easy." "I'm glad I arrived when I did." Naeli felt a small surge of pride. She had been afraid, yes, but she had not let fear control her. She had acted wisely, and now she had survived a dangerous situation. The lessons from her village, the teachings of her elders, and her own courage had carried her through. For a moment, the two of them stood in silence, listening to the gentle sounds of the lake, the wind moving through the trees, and the distant calls of birds. The tension that had gripped the morning was slowly fading, replaced by a sense of relief and reflection. Naeli realized that this moment, though filled with fear and uncertainty, had also been a test of her character. She had learned not just about the dangers of the world, but about her own strength, resilience, and ability to act with intelligence and courage. Samuel adjusted his hat and looked at the lake. "It's not always easy to know who to trust out here," he said thoughtfully. "But sometimes when you act with honesty and courage, the right help arrives at the right time." Naeli nodded, understanding the truth in his words. Life in these lands was unpredictable, full of challenges and unexpected events. But in moments like this, when courage and kindness intersected, there was hope. As the day continued, Naeli and Samuel began walking together along the path back toward the village. They moved slowly, aware of the terrain, yet confident in the progress they were making. The young men had disappeared, leaving the area quiet once more. Naeli's heart, though still beating strongly from the morning's events, felt lighter. She had survived, learned, and grown stronger. The encounter had changed something inside her. The lake, once a place of solitude, had become a place of testing and discovery. She had faced danger, acted wisely, and received help when it mattered most. And in the cowboy who had appeared unexpectedly, she had seen a reflection of the possibility of trust, courage, and cooperation in a world often filled with uncertainty. As they continued along the path, Naeli glanced back at the lake one last time. Its surface shimmered in the sunlight, calm and serene, almost as if nothing had happened. But she knew better. The lake had witnessed courage, fear, intelligence, and compassion all in a single morning. It had become a silent teacher, showing her that even in moments of danger, careful thought, bravery, and kindness could prevail. After the immediate danger had passed, Naeli and Samuel moved cautiously along the path that led from the lake back toward the edge of the village. The sun was climbing higher, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain. The air was warm, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant wildflowers. Though the morning's events had left her shaken, Naeli felt a quiet determination growing within her. She was determined to ensure that the thieves, who had taken advantage of her solitude, would not simply escape without consequence. Samuel walked beside her, his horse following at a calm pace. He had been through many unpredictable situations in his life, but he could see the strength and intelligence in Naeli. He did not rush her or take over the situation. Instead, he offered support, guidance, and a steady presence. He understood that she had the right to reclaim her belongings and her sense of security, and he would help her do so wisely. As they approached the rocky area where the thieves had initially appeared, Naeli scanned the surroundings carefully. Her eyes, trained by years of observing nature and people, noticed small disturbances in the soil and grass, footprints, scuffed rocks, and broken branches. These subtle signs revealed the path the young men had taken. Naeli pointed to the tracks, her voice calm but firm. "They went that way," she said. "We need to follow carefully. We do not want to startle them or cause unnecessary trouble." Samuel nodded. "I understand," he said. "We'll be careful. Let's move slowly and watch for any sign of them." Together, they began to follow the trail, moving through the terrain with the same patience and attentiveness that Naeli had used all morning. The rocks and brush made the path difficult, but both were determined to keep their focus, knowing that the outcome depended on careful observation and strategy rather than haste. As they followed the tracks, Naeli reflected on the lessons she had learned from her elders. They had taught her that every action had consequences, and that justice and fairness were important, even in small matters. The young men had stolen her belongings, yes, but they were also acting out of fear or ignorance, perhaps unaware of the impact of their actions. Naeli believed in confronting problems with wisdom, not anger. She wanted to reclaim her things, but she also wanted to teach the thieves that taking what belonged to someone else was wrong. After some time, they spotted the young men resting near a small grove of trees. The thieves were unaware that they were being followed. Naeli and Samuel paused, observing them quietly. Naeli's pulse quickened, not out of fear this time, but from the anticipation of what would happen next. She knew that approaching them required a combination of courage, strategy, and respect. She whispered to Samuel, explaining how they should proceed, ensuring that the confrontation would be calm and controlled. Samuel agreed, moving slightly ahead but keeping a safe distance, while Naeli stayed visible to the thieves. She stepped forward and raised her voice, calm but firm. "Your actions were wrong," she said. "You took what did not belong to you. It is time to return it." The young men looked up, startled. Their initial bravado faded as they realized that Naeli was not afraid, and that the man beside her was not someone to underestimate. One of the young men, the taller one, stepped forward hesitantly. We didn't think anyone would notice," he said, his voice wavering. "We only wanted a joke, it wasn't meant to be serious." Naeli shook her head gently. "Even a joke has consequences," she replied. "You must understand that taking someone else's belongings is never acceptable. You must make it right." The other young men began to murmur among themselves, uncertainty clear on their faces. They had not expected Naeli to confront them directly, nor had they anticipated the presence of Samuel. They glanced at each other, realizing that the situation had changed, and that they were accountable for their actions. Naomi watched carefully, her eyes steady, ensuring that they understood her words and the seriousness of the moment. Samuel spoke then, his tone calm and authoritative. "Return what you took. Apologize. It's the right thing to do. You can leave without further trouble if you do what's right now." His words carried weight, not because of threat, but because of clarity and fairness. Naomi felt a sense of pride in the way he handled the situation. He understood that justice was not about punishment, but about correction and learning. Slowly, the young men began to gather the stolen items. They returned Naomi's clothes and personal belongings carefully, almost reverently, as if realizing for the first time that their actions had consequences beyond their own amusement. Naomi accepted them, her expression calm but firm. She did not scold or shout. Instead, she allowed the lesson to be clear through her presence and her words. "I hope you have learned something today," Naomi said, her voice steady. "You must think about how your actions affect others. Respect is earned and trust can be broken easily. Be careful with how you treat people and their belongings in the future." The young men nodded, some quietly muttering apologies. They had learned, perhaps for the first time, that the choices they made could have real effects on others. Samuel gave them a final look, ensuring that they understood the message. Then he stepped back, allowing Naomi to decide what to do next. She felt a sense of empowerment. She had faced danger, acted wisely, and now reclaimed her belongings. But more than that, she had asserted her dignity and shown that fairness and courage could guide actions even in tense moments. The thieves, now subdued by respect and understanding, began to walk away slowly. Naomi and Samuel watched them go, ensuring they did not attempt to return or cause further trouble. The tension in the air began to fade, replaced by a quiet sense of resolution. The confrontation had ended without violence, without anger, and yet with clear lessons learned. Naomi realized that sometimes the most important victories were not physical, but moral and emotional. Once the young men had left, Naomi and Samuel took a moment to rest. The sun was higher now, casting warm light across the landscape. Naomi wrapped herself in the blanket Samuel had brought earlier, feeling both warmth and gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "I couldn't have done this alone. I would have been lost without your help." Samuel smiled, a quiet, understanding smile. "You were brave and clever," he replied. "I only helped when I could. You handled yourself with wisdom, patience, and courage. That is what really made the difference." Naomi felt a deep sense of pride. She had faced fear, stayed calm, and acted with intelligence. She realized that bravery was not about fighting, but about understanding, acting wisely, and sometimes accepting help when it was offered. Together, they began the journey back toward the village. The path was easier now, the rocks and brush less threatening after the events of the morning. Naomi felt lighter, freer, and more confident. She had faced danger and reclaimed her belongings, but she had also gained something more. A deeper understanding of courage, trust, and the importance of careful, thoughtful action. As they walked, Naomi reflected on the lessons of the day. The lake, once a place of quiet solitude, had become a stage for bravery, intelligence, and moral clarity. She had learned that even in difficult circumstances, staying calm, observing carefully, and acting with thoughtfulness could turn a dangerous situation into an opportunity for growth. The presence of Samuel had been timely, but the strength she had shown had guided the outcome. The village came into view at last, small and quiet, surrounded by hills and the distant stretch of desert. Naomi felt a sense of relief mixed with anticipation. She knew that her family and community would welcome her back with concern and perhaps curiosity. She also knew that she had a story to share, one that would carry lessons of courage, respect, and the importance of standing firm in one's principles. Samuel rode beside her quietly, allowing her to lead the way. There was no need for words now. The calm understanding between them was enough. Nayeli felt gratitude not just for his help, but for the reminder that the world was not entirely harsh and unkind. There were people who acted with fairness, patience, and respect, and those moments could make a lasting difference in one's life. By the time they reached the edge of the village, the sun was high in the sky, its light warm and bright. Nayeli felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced fear, acted wisely, reclaimed what was hers, and learned valuable lessons about courage and humanity. The events of the morning had changed her, making her stronger, wiser, and more aware of the ways in which one could navigate danger with intelligence, dignity, and moral clarity. As they entered the village, Nayeli's family and neighbors greeted her with relief and concern. She smiled, holding her head high, knowing that she had faced the challenges with courage and care. The lessons of the day would remain with her, a quiet reminder that even in moments of fear and uncertainty, one could act with wisdom, bravery, and fairness.